long day as Kristin coming home being like, hey, you want to watch 2 hours of my 3-5 rec play match right now? I'd love to get your opinion on that. I'm like, sweetie, yes, of course I want to. Wow.
Payback
How did
for
you know?
all those golf lessons.
How did you know
Your
that's
swing
exactly
is fine.
what I
Yes, you're
wanted to
reverse
do?
pivoting.
You tuned in now to This Pickleball Life. I'm K-Dubs and Jilly B is my wife. She's the pro and I've got the filler. She's sweet to me, but on the court she's a killer. Unadulterated and efficiently bringing you the best and worst things in PV. Tell your friends and stay for another. And no one loves us more than your mother. One thing's for sure, one hit and you're addicted. Grab a pile, grab a court, don't resist it. So click subscribe, let's go, let's get cracking. Theme song done, let's go, let's get laughing. This Pickleball Life.
Really like your hat. I'm too sexy for my dinks.
Well, we've got a big episode, ladies and gents. Pod number 5. Who's ready to drinko?
I'm going to need to after this weekend.
Let's get into it.
Oh, man. It's a big one. It's a juicy one.
So let's start with the highlights, and then we'll get into a little bit of the drama. But before that, this warning comes at the behest of my co-host that we may have some 4-letter words flying in this episode, somewhat as quotes, somewhat as
my own personal feelings. So yes, this is not suitable for children podcast, at least this episode. Another warning, it is going to be a lot of my least favorite parts about pro pickleball podcasts when the pros talk so anecdotally, so conjecture based, but at the same time, I don't have another way to do this episode of this podcast other than to really just talk about my personal experiences from everything that transpired over the weekend.
So, with that, do you want to talk a little bit about your adventures on, what was it, Thursday with the photo shoot and video shoot?
Yeah, we did an awesome photo and video shoot for my new sponsor that I can finally announce that I just hinted at. We've got Rain Storm. So this is a clean energy drink with 200 milligrams of caffeine. And I'm so happy that I do not have to drink a Coca-Cola anymore when I'm exhausted after 4 hours of play on tournament day. So really fun fact for the viewers and the listeners at home.
Would you like to hold one?
Thank you, my dear. Delicious.
What flavor is that?
I was just going to say, so this is peach. Peach is my favorite flavor. They
Peach
make
nectarine.
They make kiwi, orange, and grape. And then, of course, peach nectarine. So really fun fact. So Thursday we're shooting with Tyson McGuffin, Anna Bright, and James Ignatowicz, the other Storm sponsored athletes. And of course, in the shoot, they're like, okay, let's get you drinking a Storm. Okay, one more photo. All right. Hey, Tyson, you want a shotgun one? So by the end of it all, our hands are all shaking a little bit. So fun fact, fun question. How many milligrams of caffeine do you think is in a shot of espresso, which is about what I drink every morning on a daily basis?
1 half calf, half shot.
So
We
what do you
split.
think? What do you think?
I would think we're drinking like 65 milligrams
Yeah,
of caffeine.
you're about right. So on Thursday afternoon, we wrap the shoot at like 3:30.
It might be 30. Like, I don't know if that's 65 and then split or like 65 each shot.
So we wrap the shoot at 3:30. We've been drinking Storm all day long. And I'm like, wow, I feel really good right now. I like, should we go for like a walk? Should we go for a run? Should we play more pickleball? What should we do? And I'm like, hey, Kristin, like how much do you think we drink like every day of caffeine? She's like, yeah, 35 to 65. And I'm like, wait a second. So this isn't just like I had a cup of coffee in the afternoon. This is like I had 5 cups of coffee in the afternoon based on what we normally intake.
Right.
But
5 half calf, half shots.
yes, exactly. But I fell asleep at like 10 p.m. It was great. So I didn't have that wiry
It's a different
effect.
kind
Like,
of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. And 0 sugar for people who care about that, which is most.
Yep. All sorts of good vitamins, minerals. And I'll never forget Anna Bright going, guys, we have to fill it with water now. I can't have any more. That was my second one. I can't. But the shoot was a blast.
Yeah, it looked like so much fun, and what a great crowd. I mean, those four.
Right.
What a great group.
What did I do to sneak my way into that?
Yeah.
And
And I love the photographers' interpretations of like pickleball terms.
Oh. Okay, so
What
doubles was
yes.
2v2.
2v2. Okay, that makes sense.
An overhead was a spike shot.
Spike ball, yeah.
Was a
right?
spike shot.
Spike shot.
A tweener was the cool leg thing.
And
the Ernie was the flying thing.
Yeah.
It was great. I was like,
So
I'm
good.
going to start using this like 2v2 vernacular.
Totally. It reminds me of how I like to speak about golf in like non-golf terms and, tell people that they're just swinging a hunk of metal on a stick.
Totally.
Like, forget what a hosel and a shaft is. It's like metal, stick, swing it. Like, what does it matter? People get so lost in, what's the word, jargon.
Totally. One of my favorite parts of the shoot actually was when Tyson and I were a team playing against James and Anna. They were, and the Storm people were capturing video. And we were playing fun points, and then James and Anna say, hey, let's like really play points. So Tyson and I are like, yeah, of course, let's really go. We'll play a game to 5. So we're down 4-0, and we win 6-4. Just let the record show. And I loved it because I was like, hey, Anna, guess I can play the right side, right?
Totally. Anywhere, anytime, any net, any place.
Any paddle, but we'll talk about that later.
So that was super fun. We'll probably have some more fun behind the scenes clips from that shoot that in addition to the one we posted the other day. But then jumping over the mixed doubles, we had another fun event at Center Court at Newport Beach, the Vizzy Pro Am.
Right.
Vizzy, one of the other super supportive brands coming into pickleball. Mm-hmm. It's a spiked seltzer, so like a
malt
White Claw
liquor
or
spiked seltzer.
Topo Chico, what do they call those? Topo Chico seltzers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, malt liquor. And
those
coming
are
from
delicious.
the Miller Coors family?
Exactly, the Molson Coors family. And so it was a celebrity pro am. We had Jenna Bandy. If you don't
Super
follow
fun.
her, oh my gosh.
What a well-rounded athlete.
What an athlete. She can do anything. She holds a world record for longest throw with a football into a target by a female. She's got millions of views on her TikTok. Again, go follow her. Just such a positive, energetic spirit. We had Matt Barkley, who I didn't realize was from my hometown and went to Modern Day from Newport Beach.
Another guy who can throw a spiral.
Right, no kidding. He's still playing, which I hadn't realized for the Bills. And it was such a fun atmosphere. You cannot wipe the smiles off of the viewers, the fans, the players, the pro players that were there.
Yeah, I mean,
and it
I've never
reminded
seen-
me that like pickleball is so irreverent. Like you see these celebrities playing and it's so cool. It is not just your grandparents' sport. It's becoming this cultural zeitgeist, this usurpation of power from golf and tennis. Like, don't you see it happening in real time?
Yeah, no. I was just watching something the other day that I was just like constantly reminded of like, oh God, I don't want to be around if pickleball ever stops being fun and funny and silly and just great. But yeah, pickleball. I mean, pickleball. It starts with pickle. Like,
Sorry, that sounded like that could have been a song. Pickle ball. Can you keep going with that for a second?
Pickle ball wiffle zone. It's got holes in the mole. I don't know.
Zone.
Yeah, actually, I ran into a friend as she was leaving in the parking lot, who was giving a friend a ride to the airport, and as they were loading up the car, her friend like leaned her head out the window and was like, "You're K-Dubs! I love your podcast. You guys are the best podcast, and I love your songs."
It means so much when we get any like YouTube comments or DMs. Like, It's been so nice seeing people really liking the pod, because we try really hard not to make it just like a pro pickleball pod where it's all about the pros and we're like name dropping first name all the pros. Like we want everyone to feel like they're learning something, regardless of if you're a 2.0 player or a 7.0 player. However, this pod will definitely be way more focused on pros and first name dropping. Warning.
Right. But I mean, it's important that when we talk about pros, it's what the people are interested in.
Correct.
So it's not like we're just talking about, the stuff only pros care about. It's the stuff that the viewers, I think, are curious about.
For
so
sure.
that's important to us, and I hope you all listening and watching out there see that and appreciate that and tell your friends. But yeah, we were talking on the way home that it's interesting on the internet how you get so used to like, oh my God, 1 million views, 20,000 views. And even if 100 people listen to what we're doing, that's still 100 people. Like if you put them all in one space, that would feel like a crowd, So I'm happy people are liking what we're putting out there. And we're gonna get into a few comments and responses a little bit later, some shout outs. But yeah, super fun at the Vizzy Pro Am.
Matt Barkley and I won. We won against Jenna Bandy and Jesse Irvin.
Well, who's counting?
But who's counting?
It was 10-12, right?
Who's competitive?
You guys did your job.
Competitive.
You did your job. You made it close.
Someone once told me, Jill, you would try and win a staring contest. You're so competitive. And I think they meant it as an insult, but I looked them in the eye and said, thank you.
Go.
Truth.
I actually have a medal in the closet from the staring contest.
Well, also,
I won
if you're
in
not
third
going to
grade.
win the PPA tournament, it's important to win the warm-ups, win the pro-ams.
Right.
Like, you got to leave with a little something,
Absolutely. Yeah, my favorite was when your sister said, you even make cooking competitive. Truth.
When she trashed me in my her maid of dishonor speech at our wedding. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yes. So do you want to talk about mixed doubles with Tyler first?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I went back and forth. I'm going to be candid with everyone on if I wanted to talk about this, how I wanted to talk about it. Did I want to use names, not use names? And I came to this realization that I'm doing this podcast to share our journey, our real authentic journey. And Oscar Wilde said, the pure and simple truth about truth is it's rarely pure and never simple. And that's all I have to offer. Yeah. My truth and my story. And I think it's an important one. And I think it's especially an important one for anyone who's playing mixed doubles or really any doubles to hear, which is this. Tyler and I were playing against Matt Wright and Lucy Kovalova. I just cannot help myself.
Can't do it.
It.
Too deep, Dokovic.
Yeah, exactly. And we won the first game. We lost the second, and we were up, I believe, 8-2 in the third. And they started to come back. And at around 8-6, we took a timeout, which I'll get into why a little bit later. And I noticed that Tyler was doing what he did to me in St. George. He was rolling his eyes and audibly grunting in frustration if I missed a shot or didn't earnie a ball that he wanted me to earnie, or I didn't take a backhand fourth in the air and I let it bounce, something he told me he really wanted me to work on in St. George. And so when we take the time out, I say, Tyler, you're rolling your eyes at me, and it's really important that I get as much positive energy from you as I can. Please don't roll your eyes at me. It hurts. And he said, and I quote, I wouldn't roll my eyes if you did what you should be doing. And I was so stunned I couldn't talk, which if you know me, I'm a chatty Cathy, I'm pretty.
And a strong individual.
I'm a strong individual, and I was speechless. But eventually I did recuperate enough to say, I did recuperate enough to say, I get that you want me to take more balls in the air, but it's 8-6 in the third game against the 2 seed, and this is a tough time to do instruction and coaching. And he said, but that's exactly what you're doing to me right now. You're coaching me. You're telling me to change. I said, well, one has to do with the energy you're putting off. And then I realized we're getting into a losing battle here. We're imploding on the sidelines. We're about to beat the 2 seeds. And that's exactly what happened. We came out of that timeout. I think we lost 11-9 in the third. Matt Wright, down 8-2, did the only thing he could do. I think he was sensing that nothing was working. And he just got loud. Got angry over a call, got a technical warning from the ref, told the ref, you don't even know how to keep score, which I think she didn't hear him because she probably would have given him the step after the technical. And I don't know if that's a point penalty. I probably should know what that is. And he just got loud. And I remember feeling like, wish Tyler'd fight him instead of fighting me. Like, take that negative energy, go put it on him.
Yeah.
And I was like so quiet and just kind of like took it. Like, the louder Matt got, the quieter I got. And I left that match feeling like I need to stand up for myself. I need to like fight back. Like, if someone's getting loud, my personality needs to be like, well, hey, like, here's how I feel. Like, you want to get loud and you want to complain about X, Y, and Z? All right, well, here you go. Like, kind of like bully the bully.
That's what I was going to say. You are like the ultimate defender of people being bullied.
Exactly. I hate watching people get bullied. It is my biggest pet peeve.
Yeah. And especially refs. I mean, the refs are paid almost nothing. They do it because they love it, and they go through such extensive training and so much stress.
Yeah.
And yeah, like pickleball scoring has a lot going on. So it's not strange that human beings sometimes get the score wrong or like add a score to the wrong team and have to reverse it. I mean, there's a reason they have like a clip mark next to where they are. They pencil things twice. Like, there's a lot. And then people complain they're not, looking at anything. If we want them to watch more lines, we need more refs.
Exactly. So I learned two important lessons. I'm not going to let anyone bully me. Not a partner, not an opponent ever again. I don't play well when I get quiet in the face of a bully. I have to fight back. That's my personality. And two, if I already said this as part of one, like, I have to have a supportive partner. Like, and we can talk about Sarah Ansboury in a little bit, but I've never played with someone that supportive. That's like how I am on the court. Like, if you hit the ball to the back of the fence, over the fence, if you're my partner and you shank a shot, I look at you and go, let it fly, baby.
Yeah. I always say it's so easy to be a supportive partner when you're winning. It doesn't matter. What matters is how supportive you are when you're losing, when it's not going your way, when things aren't great. So that's
it hurt.
the whole.
It hurt so
measure.
bad, like mixed hurt. Like, we were up 8-2 or 8-3 in the third against the 2 seeds. Like, it was ours for the taking. Matt did what he did. Got big and loud and bullied. Like, it's his style.
Yeah. Nothing unexpected.
Yeah.
Just classic.
I needed my boy Brandon French out there.
Yeah, that's right. Be Frenchy. So what's the lesson here for our listeners?
Choose your partners wisely and figure out how to deal with on-court stress. That's really unexpected on-court stress. So that might be a bully on the other side of the net. It could be an altercation that you're watching with the referee. Anything that can kind of unsettle you or does unsettle you, like, take a timeout. Even if you just did take a timeout, you have two.
Yeah.
Like, walk to the back court, tie your shoelace, like, take a moment, regroup, and figure out what energy you then need to bring, whether that's aggressive, calm, whatever it is. Figure that out so you can bring it.
Yeah, totally. And even like me cheering for you, I'm part of your team too in a way. And sometimes people are like, oh my God, like, what are these like crazy things you yell, like Toys R Us and like one more and all the things that we've said over the years, and like the veracity for which I am on the sidelines shouting it. But I know what you need. Like, I'm just here to give you the kind of cheering that motivates you. If you needed a silent bystander who just toweled off your forehead, that's how I would cheer.
Yeah.
And not everyone is motivated the same way. Some people getting watched get nervous. Some people getting cheered on feel self-conscious. So it comes back to like how you talk to caddies in golf. Like, just tell people what you want and be very clear, just like any relationship. You're just trying to motivate and be the best for the person on the other.
And can we start a petition where pro players stop abusing the refs?
I know, seriously.
Show them like a modicum of respect, please.
It goes all the way back to that like podcast from Michael Lewis about referees and basketball and everything else. Like, somewhere in between the early 90s, like the Michael Jordan era and like the LeBron era and Kobe era, it became totally fine to not only like travel for 4 or 5 paces for your dunks, but also to abuse the refs.
Yeah.
It's interesting how
passage.
Rules-ish sometimes come to be. And then like in soccer, it's totally normal to like fake fall to try and draw out a foul. So you do have to really appreciate where the systems are to keep the peace and have a respect for that, which I think is a perfect segue, unless you have anything else to add about that.
No, it's well said. Thank you.
Into women's doubles on Saturday.
What happened in women's doubles on Saturday? I don't remember.
Oh, yeah, it was really sad. Etta Wright got sick and couldn't play.
That's right.
So, Etta, I hope you're feeling better. Actually, I don't know. Is she injured? Is she sick? But somehow or other, Etta and Jessie didn't end up playing. So you didn't have a first round bye, or you didn't have a first round. So it effectively was a bye. And then 3 or 4 hours later,
right,
played your match against Lacey and Lina. Prior to which, all of the quarterfinalists had their paddles tested, and everyone was either passed, or if their paddle failed, were given the opportunity to switch their paddle. And then they played the quarterfinals, after which the opposing team decided to challenge Sarah and Jill's paddles. And Sarah's had become compromised
within the 45-minute match,
which is a really interesting timeline and procedure. So why don't you start by explaining the rules a little bit, like leading into the week, how it was explained to you, what the policy would become for the future.
Players can challenge a paddle at any time. I believe the risk, if you're proven incorrect, would be a fine, a monetary fine of some sort. And we all knew going in that our paddles would be tested. As you said, all paddles were tested going into the quarterfinal match. What I think is fascinating is many paddles from X number, multiple manufacturers, failed the test. But because those players had not been challenged, there was no penalty, no forfeiture.
So basically we have 3 types of testing. One is across the board, automatic quarterfinals and finals testing.
Correct.
The second is challenge testing, which is, I think your paddle is illegal. I'm challenging you. If I'm right, you forfeit the match. If your paddle is not a problem, I pay a fine.
Right.
And then the third kind is, I'm in a match. I feel like my paddle has changed. I am voluntarily testing it so that I can see if it's illegal or legal and continue to be playing it or switch it out for something else.
So there's a lot to unpack here. So when Sarah had her 2 paddles tested going into the quarterfinals, I was not present for the conversation between she and Carl Schmitz, I believe is his name, who was a technical consultant for USA Pickleball, hired by the PPA to be on site conducting paddle testing. But I was present when Sarah left the testing with 2 approved paddles, and we went to go warm up for our match. And she said to me, both of my paddles are basically brand new. I think Gamma released them a couple weeks ago. She got hers maybe a week ago. And one of my paddles is a little bit closer to the limit than the other, but they're both pretty much on the limit for apparently delamination is too simplistic of a term, and it's much more complex than that and much more nuanced. But for the sake of this podcast, I'm just going to go ahead and say close to the legal limit of delamination.
Disbonding and core deterioration.
Thank you.
But
disbondment
in layman's terms, what we're talking about is generally pickleball paddles are 3 sheets. There's the parts that hit the ball, the face, and then the core. And if the core becomes detached from the epoxy glue that connects those 3 pieces, it is considered illegal, basically. And it somehow has a positive effect on how you hit the ball, which I think is a very interesting and strange thing to think that, like, you're in the middle of a car race and somehow your tires becoming bald could make you faster. But what's tricky is that it's not a wear and tear that deteriorates your paddle. It improves it. So you're like on the lookout constantly.
So we go to warm up with both of her paddles against Mary and Maggie Brasha on a warm-up court. And Sarah's telling me all this and says, which paddle do you think I should play? And I said, well, why don't you warm up with your fresher paddle, even though that was also pretty close to the limit from what I understand. And she goes, okay, let me put some lead on it. She puts lead on it, and the lead's flying off while we're playing because she needs electrical tape. But because you're not allowed to have your bags on the court, we didn't have our bags on the court. She didn't have electrical tape. I didn't. She asked some amateurs on a court above us, hey, do you have any tape? I need to tape my lead down. And they said, yes. They ran and got it. She taped the paddle, but the tape was about this too long, and no one had scissors. And so I look at Sarah, and this is like 15 minutes into trying to play this paddle and practice with this paddle, with the lead tape flying everywhere, now the electrical tape not fitting it. And I literally say these exact words to her. I don't think the universe wants you to play that paddle. If they're both pretty close, just play the one you're used to. Just like, all right, that makes sense. So when I see a statement that says Carl really warned Sarah that this paddle was on the absolute limit, in the red zone, could disbond mid-match, I'm not doubting that he said that. I just don't think Sarah understood that, or there was something lost in communication, because she wouldn't have played that paddle. She had another paddle. Now, you might be asking, why didn't she play a totally, a third or fourth or fifth paddle? Well, there weren't any.
Yeah, what's crazy is paddle companies are like so regional pocketed. And even though the Newmans played the Gamma, we literally did a tour of the entire facility. I didn't see one person on our amateur court playing a Gamma. We went to the Pickleball Central tent. They weren't selling
didn't
Gamma.
Have Gamma. The shop
pro
didn't
shop
have
wasn't selling
Gamma. I guess Riley didn't have an extra paddle to give Sarah. She said she reached out to him.
Yeah, and it's like a totally major company, and yet like here we were.
So she had two
one
paddles
Gamma.
to choose from. One with the tape hanging off. Me being like, I don't think the universe wants you to play that. So she played the paddle she played. But I think what's interesting, and I think here's where it gets really anecdotal, very conjecture-based. This is the part of podcasts I hate, but I think this is important. And again, I debated whether to talk about this or not. There were 138, roughly, by my math, unique players that played pro over the weekend. There was one paddle challenge.
One challenge.
And it was Sarah's Gamma paddle.
That was just released. It doesn't even have a history of anything.
And
it's not like some paddles out there.
And was tested and apparently close to this limit. Ben Johns loses to
carbon paddle played by
Ben Newell, and I'm sorry, the gentleman's name.
Philip Locklear.
Thank you, Philip Locklear.
Congrats. Well played.
Congratulations, by the way. Interesting that there's no paddle test there. So I'm just like really struggling with it's coincidentally Sarah's out of 138 people
and
paddle.
Again, we know there were other paddles that failed. There just weren't other disqualifications.
Yeah.
So again, the rule is that if you are caught with a mandatory pretest, you're given the option to switch it, right? As Sarah was. It's just that her choice was between an A and an A minus, right? So it wasn't like, or I should say a D and a D minus. Wasn't like she had the choice between something that was totally different.
The way she understood it was two tough choices. Yeah. The way I think it was conveyed by the PPA and by Carl was different. So again, I wasn't involved in that conversation. A conversation I was involved in though was when I asked that Riley Newman's paddle, like, do you have a fiduciary duty now, the PPA, now that Sarah's paddle tested at a similar level to Riley's, and Riley's playing in the semis? Do you have a fiduciary obligation as of right now to go test his paddle with this insider knowledge you now possess regarding these Gamma paddles? And I was told no, that they didn't have a fiduciary duty to like voluntarily go out and test his paddle. And
only the opponents can challenge.
Yeah, and once it was explained to me the logic behind that, I actually totally agree with that. And I by the way, I want to say how professional I think Carl handled it, Sam Flaxman, Connor Pardo, and the PPA in general, but for the most part, extraordinarily professional. And I understood why they couldn't go out and test Riley's. I also think it's really strange that after the finals and the semis with Riley, his paddle isn't tested or challenged. I'm sorry, is what I meant to say. But again, he didn't win the finals, so we did win.
Right. And then it's
won the quarters is what I mean. Win the tournament.
Right. Like if someone's playing with an illegal paddle and they lose, does it make it less illegal? Right. Like you should still challenge people probably for feeling like it sounds weird and I'm experiencing whatever it is people say happen when a paddle has become disbonded.
Yeah. And Sarah didn't experience any like crackling or change in noise or change in power.
Yeah.
Like, and by the way, what I was the most confused about with the technical representative, Carl, I said, where is like the margin for error on this test? Because MLP had just released something they sent to all the players saying, oh, we're doing within a 60% standard deviation. The margin's X, Y, and Z. And he was like, no, that's a different test. This test is binary. This is pass, fail.
Yeah.
And I was like, so for me, it just feels like, Kristin, the players are caught dead in the middle of either an antiquated rule or a rule that needs to be updated or a rule that needs to work with some type of buffer, or we have manufacturers who are purposefully towing the line on the rule. Apparently this rule's been around for 5 years, is what Carl told me. So they're towing the line, they're pushing the limits, and they're putting pro players in a very compromised position. And here are the pros caught in the middle. And by the way, if I didn't say this already, like, I'm a huge fan of paddle testing. I wish we would have had this sooner. I mean, I've been getting hit by balls off of paddle faces since coming back in the past 3 months. I can't even see the ball moving off the face of the paddle. Like, I know it's delaminated. I've played delaminated paddles in practice testing them. Like, I couldn't be a bigger fan of paddle testing.
Yeah,
that's not what this is. That's not what this is about. This is about just the players are stuck in the middle of the manufacturers pushing the limit or these antiquated rules.
We all want fairness.
Totally.
No one wants paddles to just go full, willy-nilly. I mean, there's a reason that MLB players still only use wooden bats, and that, at a certain level of pro, it matters more because their capacity to hit it hard is even more drastic when they can hit it too hard. But I spoke to some players who had experience with having their paddle have delamination, and they're like, oh my God, you can tell. And to which all I can say is, if this did happen in that match with Sarah, it looked no different from point one to final point. It sounded no different. You were right next to her on the net. Like, if it's so obvious, all I can perhaps conjecture is that the testing that they've now come up with is more sensitive than a human being. And that the level of delamination people are worried about was like going to happen to Sarah's paddle like 4 weeks from now or 4 rounds from now or whatever. And the test is so sensitive now, it caught it like right at the beginning when it hadn't really like changed sound or crackled or collapsed under your thumbs or all the things people say that can be so obvious. Because I understand if you're out there thinking every pro knows when they're playing an illegal paddle, the same way that if you're taking steroids, you feel someone sticking a syringe in your tush. Like, that's not what we're talking about.
No.
This is something that happens in the middle of play. So basically what they are effectively asking pros to do is sense what only a machine can detect in the middle of the adrenaline rush of a game that matters a lot, and voluntarily take themselves out of their rhythm and be like, you know what? I must have hit that shot 2 miles an hour faster. Carl, please test this.
Test me between points. Test me. Like, is that what we're getting at here?
So personally, my only suggestion and hope is that through this first ever, right? Like last MLP, we had the first ever blue card. Like, they're evolving these rules. We want fairness. We want equity.
Yeah.
This is the first time someone's been challenged and failed and seen the repercussions, right? Even though there have been, things flown on a court, words flown on a court, like, I think that paddle's delaminated a couple times in the last tournaments and nothing's come of it. But this is the first. So from this, I hope the policy evolves to create just a little bit of an incentive to pre-test voluntarily and give some kind of guarantee for one match that you cannot be challenged if you pass before the match.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
all I'm asking.
Yeah.
I just don't see any other world where anything else is reasonable.
Right. And a lot of people ask, well, what about you, Jill? Your paddle was challenged, which I thought was interesting. It's kind of a Gen 1 paddle. It's not the thermoformed kind of single piece construction paddle. And so my Grooven paddle is right there. For those of you that don't know, I am not sponsored by any paddle company on purpose. I'm trying new paddles every single week, doing paddle reviews, having a blast with it. But I'm obsessed and I love this Grooven. And I just want to give a really quick shout out on my Grooven Raw 13X. The feedback from the technical consultant who tested it was, you were right near the limit of grit. Boy, is that a gritty as hell paddle, were his exact words.
Tight.
And such a tight pattern.
Weave, right?
Yeah, such a tight, nice weave. And I was like, I think that was a compliment. Like, I think that is technical speak for this is a beautiful paddle.
Well-oiled machine.
So yes, I am looking forward to my opponents paying a fine since my my paddle tested positive. Or wait, tested negative? Wait,
Yeah,
this isn't like a
like
sickness test. Now I'm like,
do you have an
myself.
STD or are you pregnant?
Yeah, exactly. Since my paddle was totally kosher. Let me say that.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it is on the topic of fines and money. Like, you know, we forfeit obviously our prize money for would have having made it to the semis, and I think more importantly and worse is our points. Like that's really meaningful points to get better seeding in future draws and future tournaments, and that hurts. That really frickin' hurts. And so I've decided to, with Kristin, start to sell T-shirts to make up for the loss of prize money. They say, go ahead, test my paddle.
That's right.
Buy a T-shirt, help us out.
You think my Tui's too hot? Test my paddle.
All proceeds go to Sarah Ansboury and your girl, Jilly B.
Oh, man, I cannot wait to see, honestly, what comes of the policy from this, because I just can't help but assume that something's got to evolve. And I appreciate them. They're really out there trying. And really briefly, he explained that the way the test works is they have the sensor check the throat, right, the part right above the handle, which is essentially where they assume it's fresh skin, right? It's fresh. It's where you don't hit the ball. So they test the throat and they compare it to the middle. And the difference is how they detect this. Mm-hmm. So
the last thing I want to say is I just want to give huge props to Sarah Ansboury for her performance, her attitude.
Yeah, class act.
I have never played, total class act. I've never played with anyone that positive as a partner, that supportive. She is playing out of her mind. Like, I think a lot of people have like, you know, we're two challenger players that just beat two premier players in straight sets, right? Straight games.
Yeah.
And yeah, I took a year off. I was running a business and I'm starting to play more. I'm getting better. It's a reality. I'm getting better every single week. Sarah Ansboury, same thing. She has not been focused on playing pro, yet she was just in the finals of a PPA a couple months back in Florida, and she is playing so darn good. So I just want to give credit to A, her performance, B, her attitude, and C, being one of the best partners I've ever had in terms of supportive and positive. So Sarah, if you're listening to this, don't worry. We're going to come back. We're coming back strong.
This is only going to be a positive in the long run. I can just tell. Something good will come of this. And yeah, quite the contrast. And Friday to Saturday.
I know, no kidding. And look, at the end of the day, like there's such an outpouring of support from people saying this is so unfair.
Totally.
Why were you guys so nice in your video message? You guys have Stockholm syndrome. Are you scared of pissing people off? Why didn't you fight this hard? And it's like, this is pickleball. We're so lucky to have like 2 arms, 2 legs, wake up every morning healthy. Like if you watch us play, like Sarah and I are laughing the entire time on the court. We're joyful when the opponents hit great shots. We're joyful when we hit good shots. Like pickleball's just joy. So yes, does this suck? Yeah. Is it the end of the world? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like we have perspective.
So, yeah, I did want to read a couple of the supportive comments, you know, people saying like, oh my gosh, you guys handled it so well, class act, and a lot of really intelligent kind of responses, one of which was DP Kobus, who said, I personally feel that delamination will be very difficult to eliminate completely. The nature of carbon sheets being glued to the core of these paddles means at any moment the glue could detach itself from the core ever so slightly. yet the paddle would fail testing. If the paddle passes at the beginning, that should be enough. Paddles that suffer wear and fail to pass would be identified prior to the next match. Which that again, like I said, that's the weird thing, is like these players that failed in the mandatory testing just switched. But it's like, well, they did just play a match. How is that not a failed from the pre? But again, it's just like, I just want it to be fair. Nancy J. Fetter said, some people are just nasty and mean. They'll do a thing to win. And there's a place for these kinds of people, but it's a good thing I wasn't there. I would have called them out as only an NYC person can. They probably don't wash their hands when they take a you-know-what. In the end, they will be loathed by all loser mentality, and the future will come back to haunt them.
Okay, Nancy, again, can we be friends? I don't know. I like this Nancy.
I think we are mutual friends with Nancy. It's coming. It's coming. And look, I don't even knock your opponents for challenging. The system is the system, and they may or may not have very likely had more information than a normal competitor would, which is why in the current system, right, these pros are not challenging for a reason. They're not challenging because if they're wrong, they have to pay a fine. So if they didn't have the fine, theoretically pros would just be saying like test. With the fine, it keeps people a little bit under the piece, but it's a very touchy kind of thin ice that we're on. And Riley Harden said, is the testing consistent? Are the tests consistent enough that if you tested it 5 minutes ago and then not used and retested it, would it pass again? Are the system all over the place, inconsistent results? Truly don't know, just asking. And I think it's a good question, which we also asked basically to Carl. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he said he tests 3 times.
My first question was, how many times did you test the paddle, Carl? Get back in there and test the paddle. He's like, Jill, I tested it 3 times. I'm like, okay, I think
your credit card is still failing.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Run it again. So they are trying. It's just I honestly think they're so new at this machine they're using now. I mean, maybe I'm wrong that they just
look. It took
it's very sensitive.
It took an X and a Y axis in a graphical chart representation for him to explain it, and I was like, okay, look. I D-minused out of my first geometry class. Like, I need this like verbally a lot more simply. So this is why Kristin's doing the explanation.
Yeah.
But I did
a lot of we love you. Well
geometry
said.
the second time and graduate magna cum laude. So I did rebound from that.
Yeah, have come in real handy.
That 8th grade failure. Just to be clear.
So anyway, thanks for the outcry of support. I would say it feels 90% supportive or curious. And again, it's not about not testing. No one's complaining about the testing. We just want something that creates a little bit of a safeguard. Like, I just don't
Maybe that's not so punitive on a player who just had a paddle pass. Like,
yeah.
It's just...
So here we are, and we'll see what happens.
It's been a long weekend.
Any final thoughts on that?
No.
Okay, so something kind of on the lighter note came about in the men's doubles semifinal.
Give me some levity.
It was a quarterfinals.
Give me some levity.
With the Pablo leaning into his new blue card
cachet.
Well, I was gonna say his his je ne sais blue card. I think on memes of pickleball they said he decided he is about that life because he had another heckler in the crowd that got under his skin. I think also throwing Challenger under the
Challenger Chica.
Chica.
So I just want to say that I had an alibi for this one. I had a total alibi. I was playing my own match on a different court at the time. Since everyone wanted to blame me for Pablo Tellez receiving MLP's first ever blue card for
cussing out a fan.
Poor behavior. Apparently, they thought Jill could cause a man to literally F-bomb, profanity-laden diatribe, scream at a fan. Like, I didn't have any part in that. At MLP, and I didn't have any part in him flipping the bird and cussing out a fan at Newport Beach. But interesting. I like it. Lean into it. But in all seriousness, why I wanted to talk about that is in both instances, it seems like he had a heckler. At MLP, he had given us a bad call. And right away his team was like, that was in. And he was like, all right, it was in. Mm-hmm. But this fan was basically not going to let him forget it, that he, gave a bad call. So
well, it all was happening in real time.
Yeah,
like, it was within a 5-second span.
The fan called him a cheater, and then finally Pablo snapped. So what I'm getting at, and what I think is interesting, is now Pablo flips the finger to this other fan in Newport Beach, and I guess they had some words. He's like kind of lauded on social media for this. Like, he's such a badass. Yeah. Like, everyone's like, yeah, look how cool that is. He looks so awesome. But it's like, what if a female did that? I remember like literally reading that and seeing that, being like, trying to visualize the internet's reaction to a female literally going like this and then F-bombing out the heckler.
Yeah. I mean, we know the backlash just of a female going like this.
Yeah.
Or this.
Or changing her shirt at the French Open on a changeover. Yeah. Like,
or in celebration at the Women's World Cup in '96.
Yeah, it just feels like there's this
rough.
Double standard in female sports, and I definitely bear the brunt a lot of that because I'm so fiery. And I think it's funny how a lot of my biggest critics are other females, and I want to be like, can females please start like supporting females?
I know.
Like, I'm fiery. I celebrate fiery women. I celebrate your wins. I celebrate it when you hit an amazing shot on me. I'm the first person to put up my paddle and be like, that was sick. Good job. Yeah. I'm the first person to laugh at myself when I miss a shot. So, I don't know. Just, I hope we get to the point where the double standard in sports in general diminishes, and especially in pickleball.
Yeah. Well, and it all comes full circle topic-wise, because it's like everyone I think I talk to in pickleball, including my partner from yesterday in mixed doubles in the 4-0 bracket, was like, I don't necessarily mind losing. I just mind if we cause ourselves to lose. If I get beat, I get beat. If you played better than me, you played better than me. Good for you. But I don't want to lose because, of some weird rules ramification, or because we just gave it away. So I think we all support that, like, when you hit good shots, you hit good shots.
Right.
I'm not going to be mad at that. I'm going to be mad if you give me a egregiously bad line call or cuss out the ref.
Someone was mad at you.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, actually, I was thinking you were talking about something else at first, but I, in the women's bracket, did get challenged on one of my line calls where we did have a ref on the court, and the ref was like, no, that was it. And I was like, thank God you're here. And then I was like, he probably thinks I'm being a jerk, like I'm being sarcastic, but I actually appreciate it, because I just know eyewitnesses are not perfect, and like, I saw it out. Maybe it wasn't. It was very close, and we'll still to this day never know for sure.
Well,
I looked at the video and it was very, very unclear, inconclusive, but I appreciate the ref. But yes.
I was actually meaning a different match. So after Sarah and I were forfeited, we dropped into the back draw, and we were debating whether to play or not, because with what paddle would she play? And I was sent a 6-0 black diamond paddle to review, as I'm doing weekly paddle reviews. And this is a manufacturer out of Australia with headquarters here in the U.S. in Salt Lake. And it's a paddle Kristin's been playing.
In the west coast of Africa, where they go find the black diamonds and they extract them and place them on the surface of the carbon fiber.
Exactly. You should definitely be a copywriter or a spokesperson for a 6-0 if you're listening. Yeah. So Sarah grabs this absolutely random paddle. We're told by Sam Flaxman, great guy from the PPA, our player services director, that we would have a little bit of time to warm up, but then the referee came and got us and was like, you guys are late for your match, get out here. And we're like, you have no idea what we've been going through the past 3 hours with Paddlegate. So we rush out onto the court, 0 warm up essentially, and we go down 8-0 because Sarah's obviously warming up with a brand new paddle. I've been sitting for 3 hours, equal blame here. We fight all the way back. 11-11. We end up losing. We played against Jeannie Urquina and Christine McGrath. And apparently Christine had some choice words about Kristin walking off the court, if you want to share them.
Well, again, I only reason I wasn't going to share them was because it's overheard of an overheard.
Oh.
No one said this to my face.
Oh, okay.
But suffice it to say, she may have used a choice four-letter word about the, I can only assume, the cheering I was giving during the match, which included terms like Toys R Us, which is code with Jilly and I for like,
have fun,
play
loose.
pickleball,
Yeah.
like play loose, like hit shots, hit your spots, do fun things. And
not in this
any
house.
Paddle, any house, any court, anywhere. Not in this
totally
house.
In line. You were
Let's
totally
go.
in line.
Like, yeah. And I am also the first to sit there and like clap and say like, nice shot, Lacey. Nice shot, Christine.
But it was so funny because Kristin is like, if you have an opportunity to meet her in person, like to know Kristin is to love Kristin. And so for Christine to walk off the court and mutter, her wife's a fucking cunt. Like, I was like, whoa. Strong words, especially because my niece the day before in mix was like facilitating the babysitting of Christine's kids while she was on the court playing.
Yeah. So,
and I was like, okay, that's the last time we helped babysit.
I couldn't be prouder. Like I said, I'm always just trying to motivate you the best way I can. And
no, you're the best.
If that bothers people, and I think it's just like you said last week, like positivity kills people sometimes.
People are acting like you're like Jeff Warnick on the sideline yelling "miss," like
you're
like cheering for everything.
Yeah. Oh man.
Welcome to
I think
my
maybe
life.
the worst thing I said all week was like they can't handle it when you like hit a smash. And like I don't know. Maybe
you were in MLP
that's
mode.
Too rough.
You were in MLP mode.
But always be in MLP mode, right? So on to Dear Jilly.
I'm ready.
The first question comes from, I think, Kai or Kie. It's Kye in KC. And he says, Dear Jilly B, I was curious to know, what are the main grips you use when you play pickleball? Is it continental for a power drive serve and for dinks, and then hitting power drive topspin volleys? Do you change it to semi-eastern and when the ball is in the air? Thanks for your help. I recently got pickleball certified through the USPTA, and I'm on getting into the sport from being a tennis pro.
Key, this is the best question to ask as someone who's getting certified coming from a tennis background. This, if you nail it, is going to help you. It's going to help all of your students.
Yeah, maybe grab a paddle to explain, or I can, because I think this continental and eastern and stuff is confusing to people like me who don't play pickleball. Tennis.
Thank you. So exactly what you said is what I used to do. So kind of semi-eastern for your forehand grip. So you get a lot of topspin on it. Then for backhand, continental. Volleys, continental. Then when I was at the net, I was sliding a little bit more over to semi-eastern forehand tennis grip for dinks. But then every time I'd get a backhand dink, I'm switching that continental. And what that ended up creating, that constant shifting, was an absolute weakness in the midcourt coming in, where all anyone had to do was, if I started to come in and you caught me in no man's land, was hit it to my forehand. Because I was in the middle of switching from my forehand tennis grip to my continental volley grip. And then with your continental volley grip, it's just really, really hard structurally to be able to rip that. So what I have done since coming back to the sport now 90 days ago and fully dedicating myself to playing is I have literally one grip. Now, I'm not saying instinctually that I don't switch it a little bit when I'm pulled really far left or wide. Or if I get like a super deep overhead, like, yeah, of course, I might instinctually, from my tennis background, flip it a little more continental for certain shots. But in essence, I'm just off of continental with my V between my index finger and my thumb pointing barely right of the throat of the paddle. And that's what this looks like.
Yeah. So talk about that transition a little bit, and how it felt when you first switched, and like how difficult that was to get used to, not only, but like you experienced some wrist issues for a minute, right?
It was really hard to get used to. I'm going to be honest. I almost gave up on the third try, but I hit like one good shot. And I was like, oh, I think I can do this. And I'm so happy I stuck with it. It's getting better every single time I step on the court. It's so uncomfortable. It did hurt my wrist, actually.
Now, granted, you have always had a little bit of a history of wrist issues.
But yeah, I started to get a little bit of ulnar pain. I've been wearing a Bandit, which is so helpful, from Pro Band, on my forearm. Tremendously helpful for pain relief.
Yeah.
And so I hope that helps. That is my grip. And the last thing I would say about my grip is, just like my tennis grip, I always have my pinky a little bit off. And I have to have enough of a grip to fit my second hand. And I will, for my two-handed backhand, and I will over grip all the way up the throat of the paddle to make even more space for my second hand.
Yeah, she is all about that TUI life.
I hope that was helpful.
If you don't know, when I say TUI, I mean two-handed backhand, which I think is interesting when you watch the pros. Almost all of them use a two-handed backhand, like at least some of the time, including Ben Johns.
And by the way, I still see...
almost no amateurs do.
By the way, I still see pros, like my MLP female partner, like switching grip constantly. And I think that was something you could get away with a year ago. And there is...
Game's too fast.
The game is way too fast to be switching your grip.
Yeah.
It's just like you're asking for it. It's just such a weakness to be grip switching, at least on that forehand, continuously from semi-eastern to continental. I mean, like literally, this is what it looks like when you're at the net.
Yeah. So tell us in the comments, what grips do you use? And has anyone else experienced doing the switch? Mm-hmm. And how did that go for you?
Yeah. I would really like to know, actually.
I don't even know what my grip is, but I've tried to make it
I've put
more
you into where I want
stop
to.
sign. Like I just want to feel like the paddle's like a face in my hand. And I think that second hand actually like helps neutralize whatever you do to make it more similar, right? Because that left hand can still help create the topspin, but I don't know. I don't even know if I'm gripping correctly in your image. I'll have to look at it.
Grip it. Let me see. Oh, no.
I'm in trouble.
She's just full Riley Newman. She's just full pancake. That's fine, too. I actually am. I think that legitimately might be the future of the sport. So full opposite continental. So
lends itself more to the tomahawk.
Yep, she's in full forehand grip. So that's another thing key that I'd say, which is so shocking, right? Coming from a tennis background, is if you're not gonna do what I'm doing with a little bit of like the V in the throat, then go forehand grip. Crazy, right? But then you can get the tomahawk.
Yeah, and I think like I said, I don't know, I could be wrong. That second hand on the two-handed backhand sort of helps turn that face over when you're in an awkward place.
You wouldn't know, because when you get pulled into an awkward place, you take your left hand off the paddle.
Yeah, I just go full lefty.
And then I scream at you. Footwork. I don't want to see you one hand on the paddle.
Yeah, so now when I video my matches to have Jill beg her to watch them later, sometimes I will turn to the camera afterward and be like, I know, footwork.
My favorite thing after a long day is Kristin coming home being like, hey, you want to watch 2 hours of my 3-5 rec play match right now? I'd love to get your opinion on that. I'm like, sweetie, yes, of course I want to.
It's
wow.
Payback
How did
for
you
all
know?
Those golf lessons.
How did you know that's
your swing
exactly
is fine.
what
Yes,
I
you're
wanted to
reverse
do?
pivoting. It doesn't matter.
That was a great question. Thank you, Key. Are there any other Dear Jilly Bs?
So because we had such a fatty episode, that's our only question, because we also answered all those questions about Paddlegate and stuff. But I did have one just sort of shout out from a comment from one of our other episodes from Van Adventures, which if that means that you live in a van and adventure, yeah, A, come visit us, and B, congrats. Because
awesome.
I am about that life. And love the pod. You guys are great, informed, funny, engaging, and most importantly, no annoying forced laughter like a certain podcast with 2 uber bubbly female podcasters. If you know, you know. I honestly don't. But about the refs feeling the paddles, they are checking for cracks, gouges, and other debris that could be on the paddle. But more importantly, they're feeling for sticky substances like hairspray or sticky stuff that could somehow increase spin. Once again, thanks for the great banter.
I'm so happy you just read that. Well, first off, thank you, Van Adventures, for the compliment. And yes, come visit us. Palm Springs is a beautiful place. And this was in response to our last podcast where we were joking, like, what are the refs feeling for when they feel your paddles prior to a match? So thank you for that. I actually learned something. And you may find it interesting, Van Adventures, that this tournament was the first time I haven't had a ref touch my paddle. They just examined it and asked me to flip it over.
Oh, really?
Maybe they're just looking for the sticker.
Yeah.
But even in the first and second round, they didn't feel it.
Yeah. I mean, I mostly am curious if we're going to evolve to them pushing on the core. Because in an amateur tournament, all they're looking for is sticky stuff and that it says USA approved. So, you know, there's no D-Lam Carl on the sidelines for amateurs. So if you hear a paddle sounding strangely, I don't know. I honestly don't know what I'd do.
Buy it. I actually really want to try the Gamma paddle now. Like, Sarah is hitting it harder. I'm like, hey.
Gamma, send us an offer.
Yeah. No, just a paddle.
Let's go, Jen.
Just a paddle.
Just kidding.
Yeah, no. Awesome.
Write
into us. Please write in.
Please write in. Write a comment a question in the comments. Write us a DM on Instagram. We are looking forward to answering any and all of your future questions about anything pickleball related.
And hopefully next podcast getting back to more data-driven, less anecdotal, less conjecture, less first name dropping of pro players.
Unless that's what you want, in which case tell us that too.
Yeah.
But what are you looking forward to next week?
We have Charlotte coming up, not next week, but following week. Is that correct?
2 weeks, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to reviewing
Cinco de
paddles.
Mayo.
I have like 25 paddles
May
to
the
review.
4th.
I'm so excited.
Yes, we have a stack of really cool paddles to check out. We got Vatic, we got the Black Diamond.
Mm-hmm. All the Selkirk paddles.
You did the Black Ace. Yeah, Selkirk. You know you want to know about Selkirk. So excited to do that. And we may have to make a gripping video now too.
Wait, Ben told us we have to leave the end of the podcast with like a cliffhanger for next week.
I thought that was our cliffhanger.
That's the cliffhanger? Hopefully that was cliffhanger enough.
Yeah, so next week we're going to the hiking trail around the corner and we're hanging off of a cliff.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for how that goes.
Cliffhanger. See you.
Thanks for watching. Bye.
This Pickleball Life is a Tomahawk production. 100% organic and homegrown. Music by K-Dub, editing by K-Dub and Jilly B. Thank you to our sponsors, pbgods.com and No Thanks Ator. Do you have a question for Jilly B? Email us at thispblife@gmail.com to be included in future episodes. Don't forget to click subscribe.